Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to DRS. Welcome to season 9, round 7, and we're in Spain. We've missed almost the entirety of Q1, so we've got a bit of catching up to do. Because we only have the 15 runners that started this session, so that means nobody will be lost at the end of this session. But Q2 will be a far more important session because 5 drivers will fall out at the end of Q2. Welcome to everyone watching, everyone in the chat. Sorry for the late start, but still lots of qualifying to come. What happens a lot of times when you have the 15 runners and it means nobody's getting eliminated, sometimes the guys they're not really pushing, they're just using it as a little bit of extra practice. We'll get to read out the results soon, because honestly I don't know the results. That's the end of Q1, and Don Rabico followed by Nick Gishin. P1 and 2, Ferrari's looking strong early on in qualifying, then J-Boy, Swiss, Kev, Handa, Dan Redfeld, Flynn, Aramondi and Curvis in the top 10. Cowboy, Acetronic, Stoffel, Shane, but they will not be eliminated. Remember, that was Q1, only 15 runners in the session. But as we go into Q2, stakes will be much higher. Sometimes what the guys do is they don't even go out in Q1. Just save those tires. But you're not going to have that option in Q2. Lap time will matter. I'm a lot more used to from the other leagues that I'm in. Obviously they all use the short quali format, and what you get is a whole bunch of cars coming out of the pits almost immediately. When you see it, whenever you have a full quali session, guys take a little longer to come out of the pits. And there we go. That's a lot of cars out on track. So now the responsibility of all these drivers to make sure they have enough space to complete their fast lap effectively. Don't want to run into anyone on your fast lap. Stream very delayed tonight for some reason. Guys are watching this almost a minute behind. Almost looks like a race. There's cars everywhere, bobbing, weaving, doing a bit of everything. These are just outlaps. 3 cars remain in the pits. That's Shane, Cowboy and Flynn. Everybody else out on circuit. Looking to get that banker in. So important in Q2. You run that risk of dropping out of qualifying. And that means you'll have to start outside the top 10. This is the McLaren Curbis 96. Recently subbed into the McLaren team. I'm not mistaken, this is his debut as a permanent driver, or a permanent seat. Tire screen, but no surprises there. Everyone on the soft, with the exception of Flynn, is going out on a medium tire. Maybe looking to save an extra set of softs. Get the banker done on mediums. Still ride with Kurbis. So much better now that they got rid of that chicane. Double right-hander onto the main straight. Such a better circuit for it. Nick Gishin goes over the line 11.9, then Kurbis goes over the line 12.8, followed by Swizz also at 12.8, and then Stoffel 13.3. All of those cars came out of the pits together. 1.13.8 for Ramondi. So far, Nick Gishin 1.11.9, and as I say that, his teammate pops in front of him, 1.11.7. Don Rabico, Nick Gishin. We saw in Q1 they were P1, P2. It looks like they've taken that pace into Q2, and so far they have to be favourites for the front row, unless there's anyone back there in the field not quite showing what they're truly capable of. This is Shane in the Aston Martin. It's gone over the line and set a 12.3. It's good enough for front of the second row. Still a long way to go. And remember, this session is not really about the positions. This doesn't set the grid. This is all about being in the top 10. One man who's not in the top 10, Dan Rittveld. Currently at the bottom of the field, has not set a lap time. He's going to want to get up the field closer there to his teammate. Teammate currently on the second road, Kev, 1.12.4. We still await the first lap time to come in from Dan Rittveld. See what sort of pace he has around this circuit. See, the Catalunya circuit is going to be removed from the F1 calendar soon, so enjoy it while you can. Be replaced by yet another street circuit, this time in Madrid. If I remember correctly, Spain once tried a street circuit, it didn't work out too well. Dan Rittveld goes up into Q3, he said he wanted to get close to his teammate. He's done 2 tenths quicker than his teammate. Very nicely done, that should guarantee his position in Q1. Drivers were still awaiting his Cowboy, he's in the pits. He's also got Gertie, but he is out on track, he's on an out lap. Looking for that initial lap. Nick Gishin has retired from the session, so he's happy with that lap time. Probably won't see him again. So, he'll be surprised if his teammate does the same thing. Ferrari's very quick. I don't think they're at any risk of dropping out of the top 10 while they're in the 111s. Just a quiet time now in qualifying. A lot of drivers in the pits, 8.5 minutes remaining. A lot of those drivers will feel quite comfortable with their laps, so we might not see them again in this session. This is a man on a mission. He needs to get that first lap time in. Still quiet, lots of cars in the pits. Kev out on track, Swiss out on track, Mondi. It's going to take me a while to get that right. It's also out on track. The only man on a fast lap though, this one over here, the Williams. There we go, onto the main straight. Let's see what he can come up with. It's good enough for P13. It's not good enough to get him into Q1. He's going to have to go out and try again. He's going to have to find something more. He's going to have to find at least half a second to get himself into P10, and that's if nobody else behind him improves, because then he's going to have to find even more. Where is Kev? Kev currently P5, the second of the Red Bulls. His teammates actually just gone ahead of him, 12.9, sorry, 12.2. Kev is on a 12.4. Red Bulls relatively close together in quali pace. Remember, this is Q2. Don't know if this is their quali pace. I'm not sure about that. You'd have to ask in the Discord. Shane on an outlap, currently good enough for the second row. Kev looking to get onto that second row, or even preferably the first row. Both Ferraris have retired from the session. The only two cars in the 11s are the two Scarlet Ferraris. We haven't seen 11s from anyone else. I'm sure we might see a few more in Q3 when everyone's digging as deep as possible. Right now you just need to be in the top 10. It's not that ultimate push lap. Everyone says they're pushing, but in Q3 you usually find out they had a little more. Currently at danger. Cowboy has retired from the session, so he will definitely not take part in Q3. And then at danger of rocking out with Stoffel, Flynn, Gertie and Esotronic. And with Belt on an outlap, Shane on a quick lap, Kev on a quick lap. Busy racetrack. Shane looking for an improvement. Dan Rickholt on an outlap looking for an improvement. Ferrari sitting pretty in the pits. No need to come out. And the fact that they're not having a second run here, I think that's going to mean they're going to have an extra set of softs for the race. And I wonder if that will prove critical. So close in the pace, I won't be surprised if we see those Ferraris on very similar, if not identical, strategies. It's the problem when you have teammates that are too close together in pace. Last thing you want is contact between the drivers. Sometimes they might be faster than the rest of the field, but if they're too busy battling each other, they don't get very far. Shane has gone over the line for a 12.2, slight improvement, good enough to go up one position from P4 to P3. That'll probably be his final run, 3.5 minutes remaining in the session. J-Boy, first of the two Mercedes in P6. Really close stuff, all the way from P6 to P10, so any of these drivers behind that are currently on outlaps, they can still improve. Ariamondi, Gertie, both on outlaps. They need improvements. They need big improvements. Ariamondi 13.2, Gertie 13.8. Esotronic was a 14.8, but he is now retired from the session. Just 3 places. to be eliminated at the end of the session. SAFRL and Cowboy are already out. If we were in the 90s, not setting a quali lap simply meant you don't start the race. A lot more leeway given on qualifying these days. In fact, there was even a rule that if you were too slow, you didn't qualify for the race. Depending on the circuit, it was usually 3 or 4 seconds off pole position pace. Hasn't F1 changed? Most of the drivers at the front of the field have retired from the session. J-Boy improves, goes up to P3 with a 12.1. Not quite in that 11's club just yet. Mondi 13-2 into the final corner. Does he have an improvement? He stayed out on track, he didn't go into the pits, so there must be something. There is an improvement, but it's just not enough. 13.0, needed another 2/10, couldn't find them. Now we go back to Gertie, he's going around the final corner. Can he find an improvement? 13.8. He's going to have to find a second to get himself into 10th. Pair of Haas on the 4th row, 7 and 8. Panda and Stoffel. Curbis P9. Doing a good job on debut for McLaren. Swiss 12.8 for P10. And he's in the pits with 18 seconds remaining, so he will be the driver at risk. If anybody's on a flyer, Flynn is on a flyer, so let's keep our eyes on the Aston Martin, rather the Alfa Romeo. So he's going to be doing everything he can to take part in Q3, and if he's able to get the lap time he wants, then Swiss will play no further part. Let's see, only needs around a 10th and a half. And there we go, no improvement. 12.8, stays P11, and Swiss will be saved. He will go into Q3. 2 cars still out on track. Haas has just come into the pits, and now just the McLaren also coming into the pits. I believe that is the end of Q2. While we have a quiet moment, I need to thank all of you guys at home that are watching this live. And most of you don't watch this live, you watch this later on. So I want to thank everybody for watching the videos, everybody for tuning in. Channel's had some really great support for a very young channel. There are your Q2 results. Don Rabico, Nick Gishin, the 2 Ferraris yet again, 11-2, 11-9. Then we have J-Boy P3, Shane P4, Dan Ritfeld 5, Kev 6. They're followed by Panda, Stoffel, Kurbis, and Swiss, just getting in to Q3. Eliminated from this round, 5 cars: Flynn, Ariamondi, Gertie, and then remember SAFRL retired earlier, and Cowboy failed to set a lap time. Now we await the start of Q3. and it shall begin shortly. Just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. We've got some special events coming up next week on Saturday. I'll make an announcement about that on next week's streams. But next week Saturday we have a pretty big event coming to the channel. With some international drivers taking part. So get a notification every single time we upload. Hit that bell notification and please subscribe if you haven't, because according to our analytics, there's only 35% of you subscribe for the amount of people that are watching. Q3, a much quicker event. Guys don't really sit around in the pits. It's the shortest of the quali sessions, just 12 minutes, just 10 drivers, and it's the 10 fastest drivers on track. Remember, these are the drivers that have made it all the way to Q3. Now you've got 10 of the best going up against each other. And if evidence from Q1, Q2 is anything to go by, the Ferraris should be the favorites for the front row, and the battle will probably be for third. No pressure on the squad Ferraris. One of those Ferraris, Nick Gishin, is out on circuit doing an outlap. His teammate has remained in the pit. As I say that, he gets out on track, so that means everyone is out on circuit, all 10 cars. Gishin's going to go over the line now to start his first flyer of Q3 and stay on board with him. Nicely into turn 1, just enough curve. Don't want to take too much. Very nicely done here by Nick Gishin, just really smooth on the inputs. I still have the problem that I cannot hear the stream, so yeah, if you haven't tuned into the last 2 streams, you guys can hear the stream at home. I can't hear a thing. So if the Ferrari's having terrible gear selections and everything sounds terrible, well, you guys know about it. I don't. Everything looks pretty smooth on my side. Hopefully by next week I can get the audio issue sorted out. Don Rabico was the last man to leave the pits, so he is on an outlap. Everybody else is on a fast lap. Nick Gishin's going to be the first man over the line, and it's 11.9. Very similar to the lap he did in Q2. Dan Ritchfield over the line, goes P2, then Swiss P3, Shane P4. Kevin P6. Now we wait for Curtis to come over the line. Moving up to P7. To Stoffel. Moving up to P9. I think that's not a representative lap. Might have been validated. So I just have to have another go. And then the only man out on track not to set a lap time in this session. He's trying to set that fast lap right now. He's about to enter sector 3. His name's Don Rabico. He's led Q1 and Q2. And from that evidence, surely he is favourite to go into provisional pole. Let's not jump the gun. Let's see what he can do. And we'll only know the results of that when he goes over the line. And there it is. A 1:11.3. Don Rabico into provisional pole, and it's a 0.6 of a second cushion over his teammate. His teammate not quite as comfortable. Dan Ritchfield just a few hundredths away in P3. So Ferrari really want to cement that P1, P2. I think Nick Gishin's going to have to go out and find a little bit more. Here's the Red Bull awfully close. We have these extremely busy periods where I can't cover everything that's happening on track, and then we get periods like this where everyone's in the pits or returning to the pits. This is your provisional pole sitter. He's on the way back to the pits, having set an 11.3, and I wonder who's got a lap time in them to challenge that, if anybody. All the drivers now in the pits, except for Stoffel. This is Stoffel over here. He is the second of the Haas drivers. Panda, the Haas that is up the road, he has retired from the session with a 12.4. That means he will start no higher than 7th place, and he'll be hoping the cars behind him are not able to find improvements. And I don't think anyone's going to find improvements, because I didn't see that, but I'm sure you can. There we go. It's raining, which means nobody's going to realistically be able to improve. The track's only going to get worse. And what we might see is everybody simply retiring from the session, because the next 5.5 minutes nobody's going to be able to improve. The only action we have out on track is Kev. I wonder if he left the pits before he saw the raindrops. Wonder how this weather will affect the race. Will we see any wet weather in the race? We've seen some epic battles in Formula 1 around a wet Catalonia. In fact, this was the venue for Michael Schumacher's first victory for Ferrari. It's 1996 Catalonia, and the heavens opened up, and a Ferrari that was extremely underpowered that year was able to come to life, as everybody else was not able to drive to the max. It turns out Schumacher lapped most of the field, and won his first race for Ferrari. Take him another 4 years to win a championship for Ferrari. Sometimes that's what it takes to rebuild a team that has fallen. There we go, you just see everybody retiring from the session. I think the drivers realizing improvement is not possible. And as I say that, driver goes out on track. Who is it? It's Stoffel, 12.9. Can he find an improvement? How is the rain? We don't see any standing water, but there are definitely drops. It's all going to depend on how quickly does the track evolve, if he has a chance or not. But surely 12.9 is the best you can do on a dry track. I would be very surprised if you were able to find time on a track that is no longer dry, or at least 100% dry. Stoffel, we might just even peel into the pits, and there we go. As he goes over this start finish line, we might have, no, we don't have the end to the session. when he comes into the pits, he will probably retire as well, and then we will be underway for the main event tonight. Qualifying's all good and fun, but it all comes down to the race. There is your official results for Q3, the top 10 in this race. Ferrari, predictable. They did a great job all night. Dan Rabico, Nick Gishen, P1, P2. Then we have Dan Ritfeldt, P3, and J-Boy making up the second row. They're followed by Swiss and Shane on the third row, Panda Kurbis on the fourth row, and Stoffel and Kev making up the top 10. A reminder of our schedule here on the channel. We have SKR on a Sunday, SAFRL Tier 1 and 2 Monday and Wednesday, and then of course what you're watching right now, DRS, it's on a Thursday night. What you're watching right now is an intensely wet racing circuit. Well, at least an intensely wet pit lane, but shortly you'll be looking at a very wet racing circuit. You see, this opens up the race in so many ways. Remember, we've got extremely fast drivers in this league, but for some drivers, they specialize in the dry. They just don't do the same amount of practice in the wet. I don't think any driver does the same amount of practice in the wet. So I think even the fastest drivers in this field might find some serious mistakes. Go, the lights are off, we're underway. It's going to be Ferrari from Ferrari into turn 1, but everybody's got to keep it really neat. We've got 15 drivers going into a right-hander on a very wet circuit. Do the drivers know where to brake? Do they know their braking points? We've got a Ferrari back in the field. Got a Ferrari all the way down in P8. That's Nick Gishen. Nick Gishen losing a lot of positions at the start of the race, now down into P9. As for his teammates, started on pole, still in P1, leads the way from Dan Ritfeldt, and that second now 1 second the gap, sorry, just over a second. Of course we're in the rain, so DRS will play no role as long as the drops continue to fall. Nick Gishen has left the session, and that will explain why he's fallen down the field so violently. Hopefully he can get back in that car. And obviously in the rain there's always a chance of safety cars. There's always a chance of lots of things. So if you can get back into the car, it's totally worth it. For the time being, the other Ferrari is not suffering the same misfortune. Doing fantastically well. 1.7, 1.8 seconds up the road, and his pace in the dry has definitely translated to pace in the wet. Every time I see a caution, just for a second, I hold my breath. The combination of races this week on the channel have seen something like 11 safety cars in 3 races. So I was hoping for a safety carless Catalunya, but judging by these conditions, it would be something very impressive to get through this race without a safety car. Don Rabico leads from Dan Ritfeldt, and Shane now up into P3. Getting a good drive in the wet so far. This is the Aston Martin driver. We're right on board with him. You can see Dan Ritfeldt. You'll see those 2 cars ahead of him, but he can barely see them through the spray. There are your possible pit strategies. be an interesting one. Obviously, unfortunately for myself and the viewers back home, I don't get the weather report that these guys get in game. So they have a very good idea. The report isn't always correct, but they have a very good idea that it may be dry at the end of the race, or it may start to dry up in the middle of the race, or go to intermediates. But obviously I don't have any of that information, so the race could be these conditions right to the end, or the track might start drying up in the next 5 laps. So we have no idea what will come. Drivers actually have a better idea than I do. Not full wet conditions though. You can see everyone in the field is on intermediate. Obviously, having said that, the weather could go both ways. Track could improve, weather conditions could improve, or it could simply get worse. I've probably commentated on more than 30 races on this particular game, and I've never seen a red flag. So yeah, if you're in the comment section and you've actually had a red flag, and I'm not talking about career mode or online lobby, have you ever seen a red flag? I've never been involved in a race, commentating or driving, where I've actually seen the red flag on F123, which is one of the selling points of the game. It was in the trailer. I've never seen it. And tonight be the night that a very wet Catalonia will the track quickly start to improve, and then we'll see these lap times come down. As before mentioned, no DRS. What those DRS zones can do in a dry race is can keep those cars together. Mentioned on previous streams, if your opponent's up the road from you and he's 2-3 tenths faster than you every single lap, but you're able to stay in that DRS, you can cancel out his advantage. The moment you fall out of it, that 2-3 tenths a lap starts to add up. With DRS is you're just able to stay in that DRS train for extended periods of time because you're getting towed by the cars in front of you. In the wet, gaps tend to be a little bigger, so you don't get that effect. Obviously early on in the race, only lap 5, you can already see some gaps starting to form in the field. You can see a lot closer racing in the dry. And obviously the guys aren't quite as brave as they are in the dry. You've got to be respectful to the physics of the car, or the car will simply throw you off the tarmac. This is J-Boy in the Mercedes, currently in P6. He's lost 2 positions since the start of the race. The horse of Panda, currently P5, is chasing down. Is that an Alpha Tauri? It is an Alpha Tauri. Sorry, in the wet, the horse, the Alpha Tauri, the white nose cone look a bit similar. They've got to come out of the spray for me to identify them. Shane's still having a good drive in P3, not necessarily having an impact on the driver in P2 just yet. But as for Don Radico, race of his own, 4.7 seconds up the road on lap 6, taking about 8 tenths a lap out of his opponent. And his opponents will want this track to dry up, or a safety car to come out, or something to happen, so that hopefully they can turn the tables. But as you can see, there's still a lot of rain falling. No signs of the rain letting up. And you if you do start to see an increase in spray, well, then we're in trouble. One piece of good news for the viewers at home is that the FIA does not oversee this event, so no matter how bad the rain gets, we will finish this race. Gonna have no Belgium situation of half a race and half a points and whatever else. We're gonna finish this. 3-second time penalty going the way of Gertie. Seems like the one logo is just a little bit in the way there of the penalties screen. Let me see if I can sort that out for you. There we go, that should be a bit better. There we go. Yeah, I'm just getting in the way of the penalties. I couldn't read the penalties. So Don Rabico leads the way from Dan Rietveld. Shane still P3. These three have stayed firm so far. Swiss in P4. He's been there for most of the race. J-Boy has made up a position. He was started in P4, went down to P6, but now back up to P5. But for how much longer? He's got a horse all over the back of him. Just applying the pressure, waiting for any mistake. Cowboy now leaving the session. Seems like some of the guys having internet issues. Hopefully everyone who is having issues is able to get back into their cars. One man who hasn't been able to get back into his car, and he was one of the favourites for the race, Nick Gishin. That car is still running. It's in P14, so if he is able to get into the race, should be able to take control of the car. But if he's watching the stream, he's probably thinking, I don't want to take control of that car, it's a minute behind. Only a safety car would save that Ferrari's race. But as of yet, fantastic driving in the wet by everybody. Just the one retirement. Sorry, not a retirement, just the one penalty. Just want to get confirmation of that penalty. It is a track limits penalty for Gertie. You don't see as many of the track limit penalties in the wet because the guys don't tend to be pushing as hard. They're not trying to get on the curbs, use every inch of the racetrack. They're trying to keep the car in a straight line, and they're trying to get the car to the end of the race. So you're not absolutely pushing. It's when you're in the dry and you're giving it everything, you're trying to catch that car in front, or you're in qualifying and you're looking for that little extra tenth, and you go over the lines because you're just pushing so hard. But in the rain, most of these drivers will be able to stay within the white lines because they're driving within themselves. They know they can't drive to their limit because the car will simply not accept it, and the result will be a DNF. Have a look if we can get a better view of these. Yeah, the rain's still coming down. Doesn't seem like it's lightening up at all, at least for now. Lap 9 of 33. Very unlikely that anybody would be able to make the intermediates go that long, but in the event that a driver could make the intermediates or the wet compound last an entire race, then obviously in a wet race there is no mandatory 2 compounds. So a lot of people think there's a mandatory pit stop in Formula 1, and it's not a mandatory pit stop. The rule is you need to use 2 compounds. So since there's only 1 compound for these sorts of conditions, there's no need for that pit stop. It's not in the rules. So if you can somehow make those tyres last, you can go from start to finish. I think it was Mika Salo. I may have been Mika Salo, I'm not 100% sure. 1995 possibly. He finished the Monaco Grand Prix without making a pit stop. But of course back then in Formula 1 there were no mandatory pit stops, and Monaco was one of the only Grand Prix on the calendar where you could finish the race without refueling. So they'd fill the cars up, and occasionally they simply wouldn't pit. At the front of the race, it's all about the Scarlet Ferrari. Don Rabico leads the way, and that gap is not coming down at all. That gap 10.7 seconds, well into the double digits now. And Dan Rietveld losing touch with the leader. Shane's still in P3, but he hasn't really made a move on that Red Bull, at least from what we've been able to see on the broadcast. Just staying closely behind, but safely behind. And we've got our first retirement, we've got a caution, we've got a full yellow virtual safety car. There we go, virtual safety car. I don't see any safety car on the track, so I think it will just stay virtual safety car. Because the last thing Don Rabico will want at this stage is a full safety car. That will cancel out the gap he's worked so hard to build. Good evening to Boinkies. Yeah, Rabico pulling a max in a Ferrari. Evening to Boinkies, evening to Tsepo. In the comment section. Great to see the same names coming back every week, supporting the channel, supporting the racing. And if you're not out there in the cockpit of a car racing yourself, supporting the league in your own way, and every little bit helps. Great community we're building on this channel. Rabico still leads. Gap is 12 seconds. He'll be very grateful that wasn't a full safety car. He's been able to hold on to that gap. You see, a safety car will diminish all of that work, cancel it out. He'll have to start all over again. I think he's got the pace to start all over again. Yeah, Boinkies, see what happens when you miss out on a race. You know, you don't get the wet that often. I actually enjoy the wet. I'm not the best driver, but for some reason in the wet, I actually really enjoy it. So if you're looking forward to a wet race the whole calendar and then you miss the one that is, obviously that's going to be disappointing. And sometimes this is what happens, we get a wet race start, but within 10 laps it dries up or something like that. But we haven't really seen a let up in these raindrops. We haven't really seen a let up in the standing water. The track looks very similar. So I wonder if it's going to be these conditions till the end of the race. Go down to P4. Top 3 have got enough coverage for now. That is J-Boy, best of the rest, just off for the podium. But he's 6.5 seconds away from the nearest podium position, so he's got a lot of work to do. Panda comes the second driver of the night to pick up a 3-second time penalty. Let me just confirm it's a 3-second time penalty. Yes, it is. It's a 3-second time penalty, and while I confirm that, I can also confirm that Gertie has converted his 3-second time penalty to a 6-second time penalty. Those are the only 2 drivers out on track that need to worry about penalties for now. Obviously, we get a notification of the penalty, but one thing we don't get is a notification of the warning. So these drivers will know exactly what's going on. They'll know if they have no warnings or 1 or 2. And they'll know if that next infringement is the one that's going to lead to the penalty. Wouldn't mind having that sort of info at hand. But unfortunately, Formula 1, as far as spectator mode, has looked exactly the same since 2016. Maybe they could add a camera angle or something, it would be nice. We need a very wide camera angle if we're going to try and get Don Rabico in the same frame as Dan Ridfeld. 15 seconds is the gap. And you said it earlier. Seppo said it earlier. This is a max performance. Now going through the stricken ghost car of his teammate. Already a lap down, Nick Gishin, 1:25. 1 minute 25 from his teammate. Obviously that car is ghosting, or he'd be a lot closer to his teammate. Predict he'd probably be up in P2, and that is exactly what Don Rabico did not want. Safety car, full safety car. And what this does is, obviously the safety car was called as Don Rabico went over the start finish line. So he was not able to make the decision to pit. He's going to have to go around this entire circuit at safety car speed and then pit. So all the drivers behind him that got that notification before the pit entry could possibly have an advantage here. Yeah, definitely, Boinkies. That is something they actually should be able to do quite easily. I mean, if you look at the Formula 1 manager game, the requirements, the PC requirements on that game are far less than F123, and they have an amazing helmet cam. Can't remember now what game I was using. It was commentary for endurance racing. It was either Project Cars 2 or ACC, I'm not entirely sure, but the game had 16 camera angles available in the construct. For the time being, that 14 of 35. This is just going to extend the race time by a little bit. What happens is sometimes it can show you're going to finish in the dry, but then that next block that you can't see, rather you're going to finish in the wet, and the next block you can't see, it's in the dry. But if the race gets extended by virtue of multiple safety cars, then the weather may change from the predictions the drivers see. So those predictions are over a race distance. So if the race distance is longer, there's conditions there you haven't seen yet. Hopefully all the drivers underfueled their cars. Obviously you don't use the same amount of fuel when you're in the wet, you use a lot less. And you use a heck of a lot less when you're under safety car. Taking these rocket ships around the track at like 160 km an hour, that's not what they were designed to do. All these drivers will just want to get going again. Crucially for Rabico, he has come out in the lead. 2 seconds. And he's going to have to do all that work again. What a gap he built up. Built up a huge gap. And his only reward, he's got his mirrors full of cars again. Under safety car conditions, and we're just short of halfway distance. Safety cars have definitely been a big subject on this channel this week. I believe the record was Monday night, if I'm not mistaken. On Monday night we had 2 safety cars in a 11 lap sprint race, followed by I think it was 4 or 5, maybe 4 safety cars in the feature race, for a total of 6 in the night. And then on Wednesday I think we picked up another 4. We had 3 on Sunday. So hopefully in this race this will be the last of that. So frustrating in a race where you know you've got the pace, you know you've got the pace over the rest of the field. All you need to do is stick to your strategy, set your lap times, and you're going to win. So frustrating when a safety car comes out and just messes with your plans. Of course, if it does stay in these sorts of conditions, then all of these drivers have pit under the safety car, which means they will have a fresh set of intermediate tyres, which should be able to take them to the end, unless of course the weather changes and forces pit stops from everyone. Where is that safety car? We're waiting for confirmation, but we're not going to get confirmation. We have 2 cars trailing at the back. All depends, is the safety car going to wait for them or not? If the safety car is going to wait for them, then we have another lap trundling behind the... Well, it's one heck of a fast sports car, but on a Formula 1 track it's as slow as a bicycle. There we go, confirmation, safety car will stay out for one more lap. As for your Drivers' Championship, things are far from decided in DRS. Yaku leading the championship on 65 points, Kev 60, and Dan Redfeld 51, so those top 3 still very close together. Nick Gishin 46, Zubair 45, Boinki's 42, so anyone really there in the top 6 still very much in the pecking order. As for your constructors, Red Bull leads the way, 111 points. If you're a cricket fan, that's an unlucky number. Alpha Tauri P2 108, and then there's a bit of a drop to the rest of the field. And Ferrari would have been loving that double podium, but unfortunately for them, it was not to be. Could have got a maximum of 45 points for Ferrari. Put them right back into this Constructors' Championship, but for now, 25 points definitely on the cards. Of course, we are in Barcelona and we still have a lot of races to go here in DRS. Next week we'll be in Melbourne, as will F1, and then that is followed by Zandvoort, Spa-Francorchamps, Interlagos, and we're going to end off our season in Silverstone. I thought we had missed the restart, but that's just the safety car pulling off into the distance. Don Rabico will take over the responsibilities of leading the field. And now it's up to all those drivers behind him not to let that Scarlet Ferrari get the jump. We know the Scarlet Ferrari in the hands of Don Rabico is very fast. We saw the gap he opened up. And the last thing you want to do is give him a second before he even gets to turn 1. But he does get the jump. On the entry to the final corner he goes. And we said the last thing you want is a 1 second gap before you get to turn 1, and he's going to be close to a 1 second gap at turn 1, 9/10 of a second. And there we go. On the exit of turn 1, he's 1.1 seconds up the road. That's exactly what you don't want at a restart. Just to see your opponent driving up the road, disappearing over the horizon and just getting smaller and smaller in your field of view. Now Dan Rietveld. Ooh, things getting messy. This is what happens in the wet. You make one mistake, you make another, you get frustrated, you land up in the gravel, then your tires are wet, then your tires are cold rather, and dirty. Can't just get right back on the power immediately. Just don't have the temperature. So Dan Rietveld, who was in an extremely strong position not so long ago, has now fallen down the order, and he's going to have to rebuild this race if he wants to get a good result out of it. What that has done for Shane, on the other hand, it's promoted him up into P2. He's 3.5 seconds away from Don Rabico, who seems to be in a league of his own tonight. Fastest lap of the race to boot, 1:22.0. So that means if he wins the race, he's going to collect that extra point, 26 points for the night. Good for Rabico, good for Ferrari. And 3 wide into turn 1 in the wet. Insanity in Catalunya, and well, the result everyone expected. One of the cars didn't come out of that as well as he would have liked. That's the McLaren of Kurbis. Finally regains his momentum. He's going to be down in P9 as a result. Dan Rietveld, speaking of regaining momentum, remember, he just had a messy couple of corners, battled to get the car back on track, then found himself in the gravel. But now he just needs to get all of that out of his mind and focus on the rest of the race. Ayrton Senna once said, to be as fast as you can be, you need to be able to forget everything that happened on that previous lap. You cannot approach a corner with caution because you almost had a spin there last time around. You need to go into that corner just as hard, pushing just as hard. That's what these guys are doing in the wet. Dan Rietveld knows he needs to make up passes. He cannot finish in P8. He doesn't want to finish in P8. He wants more points than that. But in order to make passes in the wet, you can't rely on DRS. You've got to rely on skill. You've got to rely on putting that driver under pressure, waiting for that mistake. Shane gets a 3-second time penalty. He's in P2. Don't think he needs to worry too much about that time penalty, because the driver behind him also has a 3-second time penalty. But remember, very important, don't forget, wet race. If we have a safety car in the last 5 laps of the race, these gaps are not going to have enough time to expand, and everyone with a penalty next to their name is going to feel the effects of that. One man who has no penalties to worry about, actually he's got nothing to worry about. Don Rabico out front. 7 seconds is the gap. Shane now starting to come under pressure. Panda, J-Boy in close pursuit. P3, maybe P2, P3, P4 will soon all be in a battle. Esotronic, second of the Mercedes. We haven't spoken about him too much tonight. He's down in P8. Stoffel, second of the Haas, down in P9. Kurbis, man that's making his debut as a permanent seat driver in DRS Season 9. He comes out of the pits, and I just need confirmation because I think I saw something but I wasn't sure. Ooh, and I wonder if that was on purpose, if that was I have to say, a pretty insane roll of the dice, or if that was just his team making a very interesting error. Quibus has emerged from the pits, and he's on a set of softs. Let's keep our eyes on that McLaren and see if he peels into the pits on the very next lap. Let's get on board. Is there an improvement? Do you see an improvement? I see a wet racetrack. That racetrack is shining. You're not supposed to be on slicks, surely. Where is Quibus? Let's have a look at his times. He's in a bit of a race bubble of his own at the moment. Car ahead of him, 38 seconds ahead of him. Car behind him, 45 seconds behind him. So it's having a lonely race, but we should be able to look at those gaps and see if they're coming down or up. Still a lot of spray. Look at that right hand tyre. Your leader, much better view than what we saw in TV Pod. Definitely still a very wet race track, and you can see there the Ferrari just struggling for traction, squirming right, squirming left. But the most important part, that the driver's doing just enough to go as fast as he can, yet keep the car on track. Another ghosting car. We've actually got 2 Ferrari powered ghost cars now. Or is it 3? Might be 3. We've got 3 of the Ferrari powered cars ghosting at the back. Cowboy P11, Nick Gishin P12 and Flynn P13. All of those cars effectively out of the race. So we appear to have 13 runners, but only actually have 10 drivers racing at the moment. Don Rabico still leads, 9.9 seconds. J-Boy P3. Where is Quibus on that soft tyre? He's been squirming all over the racetrack. You can see he's trying to get around the corners. And a big spin from the McLaren. He's going to be open for a safety car so he can come back into this. Rabico P1, Shane P2, 10 seconds is a gap between the leaders. Then J-Boy P3. Panda still in a podium fight, not far behind. Oh, is that right? Is it the Boinkies? Just to clarify, is it the gears or I've noticed that whenever you're in spectator mode and you go on board with somebody as in TV Pod, it does not sound the same as when you're driving the car. The car sounds terrible. It sounds like the driver's trying to do everything in his power to break the gearbox. We'll try and stay out of TV Pod for the remainder of the race. Still a few audio issues on my side that I'm trying to sort out. Or one step at a time. As for one step at a time, it's more like one leap at a time, 1 second at a time. 11.5 seconds, Don Rabico. That gap has increased by 1.5 seconds in the last lap. So Shane's doing a good job to be in P2, but he just can't stay with that Ferrari. And J-Boy doing a good job of securing that P3. Just a bit of a slide as I say that. But you don't have to worry too much about the guy behind catching you every time you have a bit of a slide, because I'm pretty sure everybody else is sliding too. Is this McLaren ghosting? No, it's not. It's just Querbus out on softs. Not sure what's going on there, but that McLaren now out of the points. There we go. I think that is that confirmation of its ghosting. Yes, it is. We may have up to 4 cars now ghosting around the circuit. Challenging night for internet users, apparently. Shane, 25 of 33. You're hoping for these laps to just roll down quicker whenever you're in the wet. You know, a mistake could be around the corner. It's all done it. Having a great race. All of a sudden you retire, going around a corner that you've gone past 50 times in practice, and you've never had a spin there. And in these conditions, it's something that can very possibly happen. J-Boy has cleared Panda. Now, J-Boy has no penalties next to his name. So if he's able to come within 3 seconds of Shane, he will then pass Shane in the timing sheets, not necessarily on the racetrack. So would you say it's, when I go on TV Pod, the volume of the car is just, what, much higher than my voice? Like you can't hear me? Yeah, if you have any info for me, any feedback on the audio especially. I think the visual looks fine, but if you've got any feedback on the audio, I'm gonna need to try and spend some time on these audio mixes and try and figure out what's going on. Until then, I'm going to try and give you the best coverage I can. Just bear with me over the next couple of races, because like I've said, I cannot hear the stream, so I'm relying on everyone in the comment section to make sure I don't sound like a clown. This driver here, certainly not a clown. 16 seconds. Remember that gap was something like 18 seconds when the safety car was out. He's closed everything back up, and now he's been able to open the gap up to 16 seconds again. So I think if you had to combine those gaps together and the safety car had not been a factor in this race, Ravigo at this stage could have been leading by half a minute, and that is a Max Verstappen performance. Now entering the latter stages of the race, 28 of 33, Shane still P2, J-Boy still P3, Panda now starting to lose touch with the podiums. Is coming under pressure from a man who's been very quick in this race so far tonight. He just had a lot of misfortune. Found his way down the field. Dirty tyres, had to recover. Had to make a few overtakes. And he's done a great job to get himself up into P5, but he doesn't want P5. He wants more than P5. He's got no penalties next to his name, so technically he's ahead of Panda. But if he wants to get any further up the road, he's going to have to pass that Mercedes on the racetrack and not only on the timing sheet. Crucially, J-Boy no penalties and the leader no penalties, but I think Shane is pretty safe. He's just got that 3-second time penalty, but now J-Boy 10 seconds adrift. His main target would have been to keep that gap within 3 seconds, but it's only got bigger. Gap going the wrong way for J-Boy. Don Rabico still out front, Shane P2, J-Boy P3, Panda P4, Dan Ritfeld P5. Not quite sure what you mean. This is here, who is casting? Who is broadcasting? Clarify what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean. If it's who's broadcasting, well, I am not Fernando. And the only reason my name is not Fernando is because people kept on calling me Fernando. Don Rabico, not much longer to go now. What a job he's done. Remember, this race has been so difficult. These conditions throughout the race, from start to end, so challenging to drive in the rain. A lot of these guys don't spend as much time practicing as they do in the dry. So when you're able to have a race like this where there's only been 2 retirements over the race distance, we haven't really seen major incidents, and it comes down to some really good driving across the field. Remember, it looks like we've only got the 2 retirements, but if I'm not mistaken, the last 4 cars on that list are ghosting around the field, which means those drivers have left the lobby due to internet issues, and I believe we may just have 9 finishes. And I definitely, Boinkies, if you were watching the stream earlier on, I mentioned that exact race, the first Ferrari victory for Michael Schumacher in Spain 1996. Heavens really opened up, and that disadvantage that the Ferrari had on power when compared to the Renault engines in the back of the Williams and the Benetton, that rain was able to take that little extra away from the Renaults, and Michael Schumacher was able to make that Ferrari come to life, and he gave the Tifosi something to be very happy about. See, Michael Schumacher won Ferrari's first Constructors' Championship for many years. They had Drivers' Championships here and there. Michael Schumacher didn't simply move to Ferrari and fix the team overnight. Don't forget, 1996, 1997, 98 and 99 were all years he had to wait and miss out on a championship. And of course, I think it was in 1999, it was either 98 or 99, I think it was 99, he broke his leg and missed most of that season. I'm going to start talking about the race again, because if I carry on talking about the Ferrari era, well, we're going to go down a rabbit hole. That's going to go far past the checkered flag, so let's not get on that topic. In front, Don Rabico, Shane, J-Boy, exactly the same order. Panda P4, Dan Ritfeld still behind the Haas, still looking to make his way past. We said he wanted to clear that Haas as soon as possible. That's been easier said than done. Remember, no DRS, so you've got to get extremely close, utilize the slipstream, The drivers will have battery usage, they will have ERS. No DRS boost down the straights, just to make passing a little easier. It was 99 that he broke his leg. I think that was in Silverstone. And I mean, even though he absolutely didn't need to, I mean, he was Michael Schumacher. He did come back at the end of the season, I think for the last 2 or 3 races, to try and help Eddie Irvine win the championship. And he almost succeeded. Eddie Irvine was almost the Formula 1 world champion. Gertie, when we looked earlier on, he was the man with the most penalties. Let's just have a look if that is still the case. Ooh, those penalties have increased. Last time we looked there was 6 seconds up to 14 seconds. And it's really the sort of thing that just absolutely destroys your race. You know, you look at the timesheet, you see yourself in P7, you think, okay, that's not a bad result. And then you go over the line and your name just keeps on falling down the list. It's annoying, it's agonizing, it's painful, but it's a lesson. Stop getting penalties. Speaking of track limits, in 2023, 1,200 track limit violations were reported at the Austrian Grand Prix. This was after curbing that was recommended by the FIA was refused by the Red Bull Ring. They didn't want to use those curbs. So for 2024, the FIA have told the Red Bull Ring those curbs need to be installed or the race will be cancelled. Don Rabico, where is P2? We wait for the arrival of the Aston Martin. He's had a fantastic race, hasn't he? He wasn't the star of qualifying, but he's really got it right when it counted. Shane goes over the line, P2. Rabico went over the line ages ago, 27 seconds ago to be exact. Now J-Boy weaves over the line. Don't weave too much. Seen people hit the pit wall on that final stretch. And then Dan Ritfeldt. We're not going to read out the results right now because there's still penalties and things are going to swap around. So we're just going to follow the last few cars over the line and then we'll read those results when they're official. Still waiting for a few drivers, but these are now the cars that are ghosting. Gertie picks up another 5-second penalty to add to his collection. I think that'll take him up to 19 seconds. Painful penalties in this race for the Williams driver. Ghost car of Kurbis was a very adventurous one. Finished this race on softs. And what a race it was. Gertie, driver of the day. Surely you shouldn't get driver of the day if you've got 20 seconds worth of infringement. But the game's got an interesting way of looking at things. 3 manufacturers on the podium. And there are your official results. Don Rabico taking the victory from pole position to victory plus fastest lap, 26 points. Takes the Grand Slam on the night. Then Shane P2, J-Boy P3, Dan Ritfeldt P4, Panda P5, Swiss P6. He's followed by Stoffel, Esotronic and Gertie in P9. Finishing the race, but under ghostly conditions, Cowboy P10, Nick Gishin 11, Kurbis P12, Flynn 13, and then DNFs from Aramondi and Kev. I want to thank everybody who's joined us for the broadcast, everyone who's joined us from the stream, whether you're a new viewer who's tuning in for the first time to watch DRS, or whether you're a viewer who's tuning into most of our streams during the week. See a lot of the same names. I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. This channel's going to have a bit of a break because it doesn't do anything on Friday or Saturday, but we will be back on Sunday for SKR. And remember, next week I will be making an announcement on the channel, a special event coming up next week Saturday, and it's going to be one I think every one of you will want to tune in for. So yet again, guys, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, support the channel.